Okay, guys, so we are moving on to lesson 8.7, cubic and cube root functions as inverses. Okay, so we're going to be talking about the inverse today, which I hope as soon as you guys hear the word inverse, you automatically think about switching x and y. So that's what we're going to be doing today. Okay, now the reason why we're talking about cubic and cube root functions is because these two functions are inverses of each other, and we're going to go ahead, we're going to do the math today to see what that looks like. Here is your do now question, which you guys should have done on the link that I sent you guys in the chat. So now let's go ahead and begin with today's lessons. So just a quick recap with finding the inverse, right? What are the steps to find the inverse? Well, the first step is to switch x and y, okay? Okay, guys, if you guys do not switch x and y, then the inverse is not going to work and you're not going to be able to solve the problem, okay? Second step after you switch x and y is that you are going to go ahead and you are going to solve for y. Okay, and then the third step, just remember to always use inverse notation, which means y to the power of -1 or f of -1 of x. Okay, so here's our first example. We are going to find the inverse of f of x equals to the cube root of x minus 6 plus 1. Okay, first thing to note, guys, is that f of x is literally the same exact thing as y. So I'm just going to replace that with a y. Okay, just because when I did reference to the steps, I did use x and y. Okay, now the first thing that we have to do is we have to switch these, right? So then that means that this y value is going to go in for x, and then the x is going to go ahead and replace the y. So if I do that and I switch them, I'm going to get x equals to the cube root of y minus 6 plus 1. Okay, now in order to solve for y, which is going to be the second step right here, we have to go ahead and we have to use SWBAT, right? So we have to go ahead and we have to use SWBAT. And if we look at SWBAT, well, it asks us, okay, do we have subtraction? And the thing is that we do have subtraction, right? But it's inside of the radical, so I don't actually want to do anything with the subtraction yet. So I have addition, yes. How do I get rid of addition? The opposite of it, which is subtraction. So now I'm going to subtract this one to the other side. This cancels out. Now I'm left with x minus 1 equals to the cube root of y minus 6. Continue. Do we have division? Nope. Do we have multiplication? Nope. Do we have exponents? Well, exponents in this case are going to be for exponents and radicals. So, do I have a radical? Yes. Now, this is going to be the same thing, very similar to what we had when we had square roots, right? So, I could have given you something like x equals to the square root of y, and I would have asked you, how do I cancel out that y? I mean that square root. Well, because it's a square root, I would cancel it using a power of 2, right? Because that would be the opposite of a squared root. So now here, it's not a squared root, okay? This one is a cube root. So I would ask myself, how do I cancel out a cube root? Well, the opposite of a cube root is a cubic, which is a power of 3. So how do you cancel this out? With a power of 3. Okay, and then what you do to one side, you do to the other. Now, do I have to put parentheses here? Yes, because the power of 3 is not just going to be for the 1, it's going to be for the x as well. So you have to place the whole thing in parentheses, okay? So now that cancels out, I have x minus 1 cubed equals to y minus 6. So now, do I have parentheses? Nope. So now I can go ahead and begin from the beginning again. Do I have subtraction? Yes, I do. Is it in a radical? No. Can I go ahead and deal with it? Yes. So what would be the opposite of a minus 6? Well, a positive 6. So I add this to the other side. This right here cancels out. Now my question to you guys, is this 6 going to go inside the parentheses or outside? I hope your answer to that question was outside. So now I'm going to get x minus 1 cubed plus 6 equals to y. But the last and final step says to use inverse notation. So I'm going to say y to the power of negative 1 equals x minus 1 cubed plus 6. Okay? And that right there is the inverse of this original function over here. Now, you may ask yourself a question. How do I know that this is the actual inverse to that original problem? Well, we can go ahead and we can find the inverse of this one. Okay, so let's find the inverse of y to the power of negative 1 and see if it equals the f of x. Find inverse of y to the power of negative 1 and see if it equals to f of x. And if that happens, then both of these are going to be inverses of each other. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that one as well. Okay, so now we are going to find the inverse of y, well, I'm just going to actually just use y equals to x minus 1 cubed plus 6. So I'm just literally getting this problem from up here, and I'm going to put it down here, and let's see if that gives me to the f of x problem. Once again, we're going to follow the steps from up there, and we are going to use SWBAT for this. So I'm going to write SWBAT here. Okay, and the first step is to switch x and y. So that means that these two right here need to switch with each other. Okay, so if I do that, I'm now going to get x equals to y minus 1 cubed plus 6. And then we begin. Do we have subtraction? No. Do we have addition? Yes, I mean, we do have subtraction, but once again, it's inside of the parentheses, and I don't want to deal with anything inside the parentheses. So then we move on to the next one, which is addition, which I do have. Opposite of addition is subtraction. So I'm going to subtract the 6. That cancels out. You get x minus 6 equals parentheses y minus 1 cubed. And now here, we're going to have to think about it the other way, right? So you can have a power of 2. And you can ask yourself, well, how do you cancel out a power of 2? Well, you guys would have told me a square root, right? So now here, we are going to have a cube root, a power of 3. So how would you cancel a power of 3? Well, with the inverse of a power of 3, which is a cube root. So here we are going to cube root it. And that would cancel out right there. So did we have division, multiplication? No. Exponent? Yes, because it's a radical. So what I do to one side, I do to the other. So I'm going to cube root all of this on the left side. Okay. And so now we're going to have the cube root of x minus 6 equaling to y minus 1. Do I have parentheses? No. Do I have a subtraction? Yes. Is it in parentheses? No. Can I get rid of it? Yes. How? Opposite of subtraction is addition. So I'm going to add this plus 1. Now my question again is, does that plus 1 go inside of the radical or on the outside? Hopefully your answer to that question was on the outside. So we're going to get the cube root of x minus 6 plus 1 equals to y. But remember to use the inverse notation. And that's what we get right there. And so if you guys go back to the initial notes, you'll see that they are inverses of each other. So this right here is the inverse of this, and this is the inverse of that. So it goes vice versa. It goes one way and it goes the other way. So therefore, these are inverses of each other. So the overall conclusion is that they are inverses of each other, okay? Which also means they're composed of each other. So I know you guys have heard that word before, because you've seen it on exams in the previous units, composed of each other. And the reason that you know this is because you've seen the notation, the f of g of x equals the g of f of x, which then equals to x. Okay, so I know if you guys were to go back and look at your old exams, you would see that notation. So that's basically what that means. Okay, so I went ahead and provided a graph for you here of the two functions. The cubic function, which is this one up here, is going to be this function, and then the cube root function, which is this one right here, is going to be this one right here. And if you look at it, they are inverses of each other. They're the opposite of each other. You can also draw a line, the y equals to x line, right, which is this line right here. Let's say if you were to have this on your paper, you would fold it. They would be right on top of each other. That means that they're opposite of each other. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do like maybe 2 more examples, and then that'll be the end of this lesson. So that's what you guys are going to have to be doing for homework, finding the inverses of each other. Okay, so let's move on with the next examples. Okay, so for example number 3, you are going to have f of x equals 2 parentheses x minus 1 cubed plus 1. Okay, so first things first is that we have to switch this to a y. So you're going to get y equals 2 parentheses x minus 1 cubed plus 1. After that, you follow the first step, which is switch x and y. So we are going to switch the x and switch the y. Okay, so now we're going to get x equals 2 parentheses y minus 1 cubed plus 1. And we have to follow SWBAT because we want to solve for a variable, SWBAT. So we begin. Do I have subtraction? Yes, I do, but it's inside the parentheses. So once again, don't want to do anything with that one. So now we move on. Do I have addition? Yes, I do. That means that I subtract the 1 to both sides. This one cancels out. X minus 1 equals 2 y minus 1 cubed. Oops. Cubed. Okay. Do I have division? No, I don't. Do I have multiplication? Yes, I do. Now you might be like, what? Where's the multiplication? It is right here in front of the parentheses. Well, what's the opposite of multiplication? Division. So all you have to do is divide this 2 right there. Okay? Cancels that out. So now I have x minus 1 divided by 2 equals parentheses y minus 1 cubed. Do I have an exponent? Yes, I do. How do you get rid of a power of 3? Cube rooted. Remember, these two are opposites of each other. Now, am I going to cube root the whole fraction? You bet you are. Okay, so now we have that. So I'm going to rewrite that as the cube root of x minus 1 divided by 2 equals 2 y minus 1. So since this and this got canceled out, guys, you can actually kind of get rid of the parentheses there because you don't need them anymore. The only reason why those parentheses were there is because you had this power of 3. But now since that's gone,